You called me on FaceTime
That's
one
right.
morning. It shocked the shit out of me. Like, I almost started crying.
I was riding my e-bike. I was merging from the shoulder into the lane of traffic. The car in front of me stopped short, and I slammed into the back of this work truck. The next thing I remember, I was getting lifted into an ambulance. I fractured my C6 in my neck, had to have emergency spine surgery. Spent a week in the ICU, but much to the surprise of the doctors and nurses, I was not paralyzed. Wore a brace for 6 weeks. First day I took it off, I went for a run and decided I was gonna train and do the New York City Marathon, and I did.
All right, first episode of 2025, 10 with Ken. My good friend Nev Schulman, you'll recognize him from Dancing with the Stars, and Catfish, one of my favorite documentaries and my wife's favorite TV show. Thanks for running with me, Nev.
Yeah, let's go, nice and chilly.
First thing I want to talk about is your broken neck. One of the most startling stories that I've seen recently. It scared the shit out of me personally. Last summer, you broke your neck. Tell us the story.
I was riding my e-bike out in the Hamptons on my way to pick up my son, and I was merging from the shoulder into the lane of traffic, and I don't really know exactly what happened, but the car in front of me stopped short, and I slammed into the back of this work truck, and the next thing I remember, I was getting lifted into an ambulance, and turns out I fractured my C6 in my neck, had to have emergency spine surgery. I spent a week in the ICU, but against all odds for that type of a fracture, and much to the surprise of the doctors and nurses, I was not paralyzed. And thank God, I was back on my feet, wore a brace for 6 weeks. The first day I took it off, I went for a run and decided I was gonna train and do the New York City Marathon in November. And I did. So that's...
Well, I'm incredibly proud of you. Your tenaciousness was awesome. You called me on FaceTime
That's
one
right.
morning, and I answered the phone. Hey, what's up? And you're in a serious neck brace where you've obviously injured, and it shocked the shit out of me. Like, I almost started crying, and I was just so happy. First that you were alive, but to see you get up and move around was really inspiring. And I love seeing you and your wife interacting and your wife taking care of you. It reminds you of all the good things that marriages can produce.
Yeah, one of the, I think probably major takeaways for me of the injury was when you're really in a position of sort of helplessness and you can't really do anything for yourself and certainly not for anyone else. It's amazing to see who shows up and really takes over and fills in and handles business. And my wife, no surprise, just didn't miss a beat, just picked up the slack, handled it. My uncle came in and helped with all the legal issues and the hospital bills and all that, handling all the insurance stuff. And my mom showed up from LA. And I remember that first week back home, sitting at the dining room table to have a meal with my family, and I started crying because I just never felt so incredibly supported and lucky to have such an amazing group of people who showed up for me. And it really kind of puts a lot of stuff into perspective.
Yeah, that's exactly what my takeaway was. It puts everything in perspective when you realize that rich man has a million problems, a sick man has one. I'm sure
That's
when
right.
you broke your neck, you were like, just please, let me get through this. I'll take everyone else's problems. Just let me walk again.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see you back out here. And for people who may recognize you from Catfish, which, by the way, is one of my favorite all-time documentaries. So good. Give me the brief overview of how that started.
Oh, man.
What was the premise? How'd you get involved with the person who catfished you?
Yeah.
For people who might not know, it's a little bit
Yeah, of course.
The documentary's a little bit old now.
Yeah.
But the term has become so mainstream and is really because of you.
Yeah. So, you know, on the short list of life-changing experiences that I've had in my 40 years, getting catfished was certainly probably in the top 3. Breaking my neck was another one, and probably, you know, starting my family is the other. But in 2007, in the early days of social media, I met this young girl on MySpace who found my photography website, which was mostly ballet dancers at the time. And she reached out because she had been inspired to use my photos as the subject of her watercolor paintings. And it was charming, and she was this really precocious 8-year-old girl in Michigan. And so I started a fun correspondence with her and her mom and her family. And over the course of 9 months, got really close with them and ended up developing this like flirtation relationship with the older sister who was 19. I was like 24. And we kind of started dating, but she lived in Michigan.
Yeah.
And we kept making plans to meet, and they kept falling through. And finally, after 9 months.
And by the way, quick note, this is before the show Catfish, where it would be very obvious that someone's full of shit.
Yeah, this is early. This is even early webcam days. No one had camera phones yet. Like,
no FaceTime.
Right. This was when you had to like have an external webcam, and you had to know how to use that. Anyway, so finally, I started to grow a little suspicious, and my brother, who's a filmmaker, who had been following the story, was like, "Come on, let's just go show up in Michigan and meet this girl."
I love it.
So that's what we did. We showed up, and if you've ever seen the TV show Catfish, or even if you're familiar with the term, what I discovered was that I'd been talking to someone very different than they had presented themselves to be. And my brother and his friend made an amazing, beautiful documentary called Catfish, which did really well, and subsequently turned into a TV show that I've been lucky enough to host for the past 12 years.
Wow, 12 years, what a crazy long run.
Yeah.
Well, my wife is enthralled with the show. We watch it together frequently. And it always seems so obvious to me that the people getting catfished.
Yeah, but you know what I tell people when they say, how can people still be getting catfished? I often ask them, do you play the lottery?
Yeah.
And most people will say, yeah. And I'll say, you know you're never gonna win, right? But there is a chance.
Yeah.
And that's fun.
Yep.
People want something to believe in. And if that something happens to be that they're in love with Mr. or Mrs. Perfect, and it's making them happy, I get it. It's easy to ignore red flags and put your blinders on if you're getting, you know, some emotional and you know, friendship in the process. So that's why I think it's still a thing, and I don't think it's going away.
You mentioned that you were photographing ballet dancers.
Yeah.
What's your background in dance, and how did you come to be on Dancing with the Stars? Dancing with the Stars.
I'm very lucky to have grown up in New York City, specifically right in this neighborhood on the Upper West Side.
I was gonna say, didn't you grow up like right here?
Yeah, so that building actually right there, the towers right there, one of those towers, my grandmother lived pretty much for the last 40 years until she passed away a couple of years ago. So this is really my hood. And my family's just always been into the arts. I was really fortunate that in 5th grade, a amazing dance organization called the National Dance Institute came to my school to offer free after-school Friday afternoon dance class. I tried it, I loved it, I started dancing with them, and had a little bit of like a childhood dance career, but amateur. Not, I've never paid, but we traveled and performed, and I really got a taste for the stage, and always loved it. And then when I got into film and photography, it was sort of a natural fit because I understood the process. I appreciated the discipline and the language of movement, and I started filming and photographing dance. And then, obviously because of Catfish, I got to be known and somewhat of a celebrity, and it just worked out when they reached out to me and asked if I wanted to be on the show. I was so excited. It was such a thrill.
You killed it, right?
Yeah, I made it to the finale and ended up runner-up.
Which is crazy. They have some incredibly talented people on there.
Yeah,
They always have a couple ringers. I guess you were the ringer that year.
Yeah, me, Caitlin Bristow, who's a bachelorette, so.
Oh yeah, she did exact clock.
She was great, yeah. Oh yeah, they just started dating, that's right. Nellie was the other finalist.
Oh wow.
And AJ McLean was on there. I'm trying to think who else. It was great, it was awesome. And really just, I'd never really been into ballroom dancing, but what an amazing art form. And,
yeah, you killed
sport.
it. Was it fun?
It was the most, honestly, it was the most fun 12 weeks of my life.
Really?
If I could go back and start over, I'd have been a professional dancer.
Oh.
It's just so satisfying. Well, this is why I think I love running, because it's physical and you get to really track your improvement.
Yep.
And there's nothing, at least for me, more satisfying than physical exertion.
When you were in school and taking the after-school dance, did you play any other sports?
Yeah, I played sports, but in the city, no one takes sports that seriously.
I gotcha.
So it was always pretty casual. My dad's a great athlete, so he taught us tennis, and we played a lot of golf, and I was always a good athlete naturally. I went to sports camp in the summer, and I'm very competitive.
Yeah.
So for me, it was always about playing to win.
And then when did you initially get introduced to running? I think your dad was a runner, right?
My dad was a runner. He was addicted to. He's an addict, much like you actually. And before he was addicted to ballet and yoga, he was addicted to smoking and other drugs.
Yep.
And one of the things that helped him stop doing drugs and smoking cigarettes was running. And he started running every day.
I'm familiar with that journey.
And so I always grew up with this presentation of discipline and consistency that my father really set for me. And he always used to talk about his runs and how he loved training and how satisfying it was. And he would take me every marathon Sunday, because he still lives on Central Park West, right there.
Oh, wow.
And 68th. He would take me to watch the finishers cross the finish line. And so it was always sort of planted in my head that like, one day I gotta run the New York City Marathon.
Yeah.
And then in 2015, I was up in Connecticut visiting Casey Neistat for a weekend. And I got there on a Friday evening, and he said, "Oh, Nev, by the way, I'm doing a triathlon sprint tomorrow morning. You should do it with me." And I said, "Okay, cool. I guess I could do that. I'm sort of fit." I was, 28, 29. So he borrowed a pair of shoes for me from one neighbor and a bike from the other. And at 7 a.m. the next morning, I set out on one of the most challenging but also exciting, physical adventures of my life. And I remember finishing that and being like, wait a second, this is fun. I didn't know adults raced and you could like be competitive and do this. And so that fall, I signed up for the New York City Marathon with the very ambitious and somewhat naive goal of running a sub 3, not really knowing how much training that would require.
Yeah.
And did okay. Ran a 3:34.
First time out?
First time out.
That's really good.
Next year, I got a little bit more serious, ran a 3:21. And then I was like, okay, if I'm gonna do this, I gotta really get serious. Oh, nice long stride. I gotta get really serious. So I started training more seriously the next year. And in 2018, I got my sub 3 PB.
Nice one. And
Which I'm playing. Yeah.
The New York City Marathon is actually where we met. And
Oh, that's right.
I write about it in my upcoming book about standing on the bridge.
Yeah,
and
right
I'm
at the
ready
base
to
of
go,
the
and I'm
bridge.
like, I gotta get under 2:30. And I had on throwaway
Oh my
clothes,
God, 2:30.
a flannel shirt. I mean, I did look like I was gonna run fast, I'm sure. And I'm standing in like the sub-elite wave.
Right.
And he's standing there, I didn't recognize him, and I'm like, oh, what's up? I don't know if you said to me or I said to you, how you feeling, what are you gonna run? And at some point I said, I'm gonna try and run under 2:30. And you were like, what? And I was like, oh. And I don't know how it dawned on me, but I'm like, oh, Nev. I guess I realized they were like celebrities in the corral. I'll let you tell the rest of the story because
Yeah, are you good?
it's super funny.
So yeah, so Ken says to me, wait, I know you, my wife is a big fan of Catfish. We gotta send her a picture.
No.
Right? No.
No. This is what was so great about the story. Nev says, let's send her a picture.
Right.
And I said, I don't have a phone with me. I'm like, looking at him like he's crazy because he has a phone with him. I'm like, I'm not running with anything. I'm on a fucking
Right, well you
survival mission.
you came to win, I came to have fun. So yeah, so I said, no big deal. I'll take a picture and I'll send it to her.
I'm thinking, this guy's not gonna send my wife a text from his cell phone? I'm like, not realizing what a kind person he is, like, and trusting. This guy, yeah, I'll just text it from my own number.
Well, if I had known who your wife was, you probably shouldn't have trusted me. But I didn't know at the time how magical and wonderful she was. No, so I sent Shelby a text, and then we got in touch. Yeah, we've been buds since.
Yeah, I love that story because that to me is a reflection of New York and what New Yorkers are all about. Just like, oh yeah, give me the number here. Here's the text.
Yeah.
Where, you know, sometimes, certainly people with celebrity status can almost think that they're so important that someone else getting their cell number would be like
Yeah, well,
catastrophic.
to me, anyone trying to run a 2:30 is a celeb. So,
Well, it reminds me one time I was working in New York one summer,
what'd you end up running that year?
2:33.
Disgusting.
But I wanted to go faster, but I ended up coming up on the finish and I'm dying.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you race and it feels effortless at times, and
Oh,
other
yeah.
times every step
Oh God, I
is
know.
a struggle. And that race, every step I was working hard.
Yeah.
It wasn't an easy mile there. And as I'm coming up the finishing stretch, Shalane Flanagan's closing on me.
Wow.
She would have been trying to run all the majors in like some crazy 6-month span. Because of COVID, they were all grouped together. So she obviously, I mean, she won the New York Marathon in like probably under 2:20. So she was capable of running much faster. But this was like a novelty thing. So she's sprinting behind me. And the crowd starts lighting up and I'm like, what the fuck? They're not cheering for me.
Yeah.
I look back and I see her. And, you know, like a typical insecure guy, I'm like, fuck this. I'm not letting her beat me.
Oh my
I
God.
start sprinting. I beat her by 1 second.
Wow.
But we sprinted for a good 400 to 600 meters.
Oh.
I ended up winning the Masters 40 and over
Oh wow.
by 3 seconds. Had she not
Right.
been closing,
Wow.
I could have easily just jogged it in the last like
Yeah.
200 or 300
Well,
and
so
missed.
there's an example where insecurity and toxic masculinity pays off. See? Once in a while it
My
pays off.
favorite liberal. But Anyway, one time I was in New York in the, probably around 2015. No, sorry, 2013-ish, before I moved to LA. And I was going to meet some clients in Times Square. It was summertime. And I was on 7th Avenue, and I couldn't get a cab, and I was late. And it's hot, real hot. And I'm kind of jogging, but trying to avoid breaking out into a full sweat.
Yeah.
And a guy pulls up in like some kind of like Cadillac. And he's like an older guy, like gangster looking
Like
guy.
a livery car? Like a...
No,
Oh.
like a dude.
Just a regular guy.
Yeah, like he looked like an Italian mafia type guy.
Sure.
And he had a young girl in the front seat with him, probably in her 20s, pretty. And he's like, hey buddy, you need a lift?
Wow, I love that.
And I was like, yeah, I'm going to Times Square. And I just jumped in the back seat, and he's like, okay. And he drove
Love
me to where
that.
I was going. No problem. He had seen me miss a few taxis. And when I tell people that story that aren't from New York, they're like, you jumped into a stranger's car?
Oh,
Like,
yeah. Oh, I got a good story like
you
that.
have to be in New York to understand.
Laura
You just know.
and I were on our way to the MTV Video Music Awards a couple years ago. And they've been doing it out in Jersey City the past few years. And on a weekday at 5 o'clock, there's terrible traffic to get out, to get through Manhattan into
sure.
Jersey. So we're in a cab, or an Uber, and it's just gridlock. And if you're not from New York, you don't really understand what gridlock is. People say, oh, there's bad traffic in Nashville. No, no. Gridlock is you will not move for 25 minutes. You will not move, not slow, nothing. So we realized we got to get out of this car because we got 7 blocks of gridlock. That could take an hour and a half. So we walk the 7 blocks to the entrance of the tunnel because that's where the traffic finally starts moving.
Yeah.
And at every red light, I literally just started waving at cars until someone would open the window and I'd say, can you give us a ride to Jersey City? And the first few cars said no. But eventually, this guy and his wife with their teenager in the back said, hey, you're Nev, get in.
That's so
And
great.
so we jumped in the back of their car and they drove us there. It was great. So I agree. If you know how to speak the language of New York City, there's no better place.
Yep, that's exactly right. We had some friends come visit from Wisconsin. They adopted a son when we adopted our daughter. So the wife, who's the godmother of one of our kids now, one of our biological kids, lived there with Shelby for 8 weeks. And they came to visit us in New York. And it was, they came for like a week. So part of the week I was working and they went out by themselves walking around.
Yeah.
And I came home and I see all this like fire department merch
Oh yeah.
and CDs or DVDs.
Oh God.
And I'm like, no.
They got you.
He's like, what? I go, please don't tell me you bought these hats.
Mixtapes.
He's like, yeah, they were shooting a movie scene and they needed extras. All I had to do was buy the hats. And then another guy sold me his mixtape. I'm like, how much? He's like, 40 for the hat and 20 for the CD. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God. But it's like when I lived here, I never got approached by those people. And if you did get approached by like the rickshaw things,
Yeah.
hey, you need a ride, and you're like,
Yeah.
buddy, I live here. Come on,
Right.
cut me some slack.
I know. I always would take it as an insult.
Exactly.
I don't look like a local.
Exactly.
Can't you tell?
It's funny you say that because I was like, he doesn't know you live here. I'm like, oh, you should. So what's next for you on the running scene?
So, actually, yesterday I started a 15-week training program for the London Marathon. I've never run the London Marathon. It'll be my second major. And I'm trying to set a new PB because I'm working with Runna, the training app.
Oh, nice.
And they were really excited to try and help me use the app to train and see if I could run my fastest marathon.
And what was your fastest?
So my fastest is New York City 258.
Yeah.
So anything sub 258 is what I want.
Well, the year that I ran 233 here, about 6 weeks before, I ran 229 in London.
Oh, so it's
So
faster.
all things being equal,
Yeah.
it's probably 3 to 5 minutes faster.
Do you think that your London marathon may have contributed to some fatigue for New York City?
Yeah, I could make the argument that it hurt or helped.
No, wait, but London's in April.
No, this was during
Oh.
COVID.
Oh,
So
right,
they had
okay.
London in October.
Ah, okay.
Maybe even September. Might have been late September. And then first Sunday in November for
Right.
New York.
So yeah, I'm excited. And like, to sort of go back to what we were saying earlier, one of the other major takeaways from my accident was that after spending 6 weeks in a neck brace, unable to really do anything, I learned just how important fitness is to me. And not just physically, but really mentally. Because I was going crazy. I could feel my body weakening, and I could just tell that all that energy and, you know, anxiety and shit that I get out when I run was building up.
Especially when you identify as a physical person and someone who's fit and active, and that gets taken away from you.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's something that I think about frequently. It's just like, God, thank God for my health.
Well, and I was also mid-training program to PB in December at what was going to be the Honolulu Marathon.
Yeah.
So I was really starting to feel like excited, you know, when you get to like week 4 or 5 of a training program and you start getting into those workouts that would have been impossible 2 months earlier, and you're crushing.
That's a very good point.
I was so hyped. That morning I went on a crazy progression run, and I was so satisfied, and then it all just turned off. So it was so frustrating to lose that fitness, but I'm so excited to get it back.
Well, you're back and better than before. What's up with the show? Has it been renewed?
We're looking to start production on what will be season 10.
Oh, nice.
In the next month or 2. So excited to get back to work. Gonna have to find a new co-host. Unfortunately, our former co-host Cammie moved on to bigger, better things. So we're happy for her, but you know, we're gonna have to find someone else or some other people to fill in for an episode here or there.
Well, if you need a fill-in, I know a guy.
I'd rather have a girl, actually.
Super charismatic.
How about Shelby?
No, she would die. She'd love to do it. She'd love to fire up a little chocolate.
All right, so I'm supposed to do an easy 5. I don't care. You want to stop now or are you good?
We'll stop here.
Okay.
We'll jog
Whew.
up. What are you gonna do?
No, it doesn't matter. I'll do it tomorrow.
You sure?
Yeah. I just my training for this week, I have a 5-mile easy run. So I was like, oh, that could be this if we do one more loop.
You can do one more loop.
You go do one more loop. I'm gonna fucking drop dead.
Okay. All right, so I'll do one more loop.
All right. Well, Nev, thanks for running with me. Thanks for sharing your story with the audience. I love you. I love your story. And I love spending time with you.
I'm gonna say one more thing.
Yes.
2 things.
Yes.
1, after I had my accident, I've never felt so connected to my fans and the people who came to my emotional support online just to tell me they're praying for me, to share their stories of recovery. I've really never felt so much a part of a community than I did after that. And the people who stopped me on the streets to ask how I'm feeling, it was amazing. So thank you to everybody who reached out. And then the second thing I'll say, which is sort of a 2-parter, so you'll end up doing this loop with us. But the other day I was on a run, and you know, running for most people is a pretty solo activity. So it's always nice when you get some outside encouragement. And I was running through a construction site, and so the guy doing the flagging traffic had sort of waved to indicate that I need to move over. And when I got up to him, very quietly, he just said, "All right, champ." And it's a simple little thing, but it really gave me such a boost and made me feel so cool that this guy recognized me and was like, I'm gonna take 2 seconds just to encourage this guy. So encourage your friends. You never know how much a small thing can mean to someone.
And that's a great message to end on. Thanks for being with me, Nev. Appreciate you. See you guys. Boom.
And maybe you can explain why you're gonna drop that after 2 laps. Otherwise people
I
are
can.
confused.
Yeah. I'm gonna finish this loop. Ken's gonna go back to the hotel. He already did a 10-mile hard run.
Yeah.
So
I did a hard workout this morning, and I always have a hard time after a long flight sleeping in a hotel. But we're out here, and you should be too. Boom. See ya.